Hello, everyone, and welcome to Why Not Me? I am Sarah Papp, and I'm here with my good friend and fellow life coach, Tasha. You want to say hi, Tasha?
Hi, guys.
So today we are continuing our conversation of why not me, the essence of our conversation that anything is possible, and really challenging the beliefs that we are limited in any way. And the focus that we're going to have today is talking about figuring out what you want and then really declaring what you want in your life. So we're going to have this kind of an open conversation, but I also did receive a question via email that I'd love to use to kick off the conversation for how we figure out what we want. So this is a question that I received from Gloria White, and she said, I'm one of those who doesn't really know what I want. How do I really figure that out? So I love that question because I think that so many people struggle with that, of figuring out what they really want and believing that we're kind of stuck because we don't even know where to go because we don't know what we want. And my first thought with that is there any area where you are pretending to not know what you really want? Because I know in my own life, in my past, and even sometimes I can catch myself thinking this now, is I'll have a thought of something that seems cool or something that would be magical if that could happen. But then it's quickly followed by, oh, but if only, or, something that stops that idea. So I think that would be one of the first areas to look at. And there's some awesome questions that we as Martha Beck coaches use that we got from our training, and Tasha's used it on me several times, and I love it. So I'm going to kind of toss the ball over to you, Tasha. If you wanted to share those questions that we can ask ourselves to help us kind of look at what we may want if there were really no limitations and no rules.
Yeah, for sure. So this exercise is something that I would have a client do, or, even sometimes when I'm talking to my friends about, what they want, and maybe they don't necessarily know, or like you said, what are they pretending not to know? I'll do this little worksheet, and it's an exercise that's called whizzing on the electric fence. So it kind of has a funny name, but I think even when you say the name to people and then they're kind of thrown off guard a little bit by that, then it really allows them to open up when they answer the questions so that they're not stuck in thinking too much about the questions. So if the question comes up, it's kind of like, give the first answer that comes into your head, whether you think it makes logical sense or not. Just shout out what comes up, and not try to talk yourself out of it. Don't let your mind take control. So I'm just going to read the questions, and then, if people, if you mentally want to think about what your answer might be and write it down for your own purpose, or people who are listening to the recording later, you can do the same thing. So 1, if I didn't care what people thought, I would. You fill in the blank. 2, if I were sure that I would succeed, I would. Number 3, if I had the nerve, I would. 4, if I could be certain it would be the right choice, I would. If I weren't worried about the future, I would. And if I had the freedom, I would. So what happens with these questions is it helps identify any areas in your life where you feel very rule bound, or like Sarah said, very limited in what you think is possible. And then it kind of pushes those boundaries. So, by giving the answer, it doesn't mean you have to go out and do that thing right now. It's just putting it down on paper so that you know in your heart what you really want and not what your mind is allowing you to believe is possible. So when you go and you look at these answers, try and figure out what it is in those answers that stands out for you, and how can you start doing a little bit of whatever that is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that sometimes when you look at what the answers are, and just like you said, just start doing a little bit of that right now, that it's interesting where it can take you. Because I looked at those questions years ago in what I call my past life, when I was working a job and I wasn't happy, and I kept thinking, but I don't really know what I want to do. I would think about doing another job, and I would sabotage me getting a different job, because that's a clue right there that was like, deep down I kind of knew what I wanted, but I didn't know. But the interesting thing is, when I answered those questions, it was like, if I had the nerve, I would quit my job immediately. And if I knew I could succeed, I would. And it was be an artist. And I kept thinking about being an artist and going to art school and all of that. Well, I took that and I ended up deciding, why don't I just sign up for a life drawing class and a painting class and just start taking some art classes? Well, long story short, I didn't end up going into a Master's of Fine Arts program, which I had kind of thought about, but it led me in this direction of seeing more, of actually tapping into more of my creative side and using more of my right brain and connecting with new people who didn't have a traditional 8-to-5 job. And it just got me on like a freer path that started to actually knock away some of my beliefs about what my job needed to look like. So just to kind of give that as a little story of this, by filling this out and what your answers are, it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I kept answering artist, so I must need to be an artist. No, I am an artist, even though I'm not a professional artist. I create art in my own way, and it's definitely a part of my coaching. But it was a huge vehicle for me to start finding what I really wanted and to connect with people who really spoke to me and helped me connect to my true self.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had, when we were in coach training, I was still working at my job with the airline, which I loved working for the airline. I mean, I did really like everything about it. And towards the end of being there, it was kind of like, I'm feeling called to do something different. And I feel like this is ready to tie up now. Mm-hmm. And I was just so eager to get out of there that I started, seeing problems maybe where there wasn't necessarily problems.
Yeah.
And it was that, when I was looking at these questions, it's like, oh, I would totally quit my job if I knew it was the right decision, if I wasn't worried about the future, if I didn't care what other people thought, if all of those things. I probably answered quit my job for every one of them. Mm-hmm. But then when I looked at it further, it wasn't even really about quitting my job. It was, I had a part-time schedule, 3 days a week, 25 hours. And what was happening was, whenever there was a vacant shift, I would think, oh, I should just pick that shift up for some extra money, or I should pick that shift up so that the person that's working doesn't have to work alone. They're short-staffed, or someone's sick, or, oh, that person really wants the day off to go visit their family, or whatever it is. And so I kept taking on these extra things as if it was my responsibility. And that's what was actually driving me to think, I want to quit my job.
Yeah.
So the answer wasn't quitting the job. The answer was sticking to the schedule that I had bid on, that I had wanted, and not picking up extra hours. So that's another thing I feel like people can look at when they answer the questions. So this might be the answer, right? Quit my job. But what's really behind that? What is it about your job that you're not enjoying that perhaps you could change?
Yeah.
Or at least change the way that you think about it.
Yeah. Or is there anything in your life that you really love to do that you're not allowing yourself to do, or that even almost like you secretly kind of love, you know?
Yes.
That people might think that you are kind of weird that you signed up to do a life drawing class. I don't know. I don't know that my friends necessarily thought that I was weird, but like I didn't know anybody else who is going out and drawing nudes every Tuesday night up until like 10 p.m. You know, it was things that just looking at what might just seem kind of fun to do, even if it seems like it might appear a little strange in your life right now. Or also thinking about what's something that I may have loved at another time in my life. Because for me, art goes back to when I was a baby. I would love to color. That was one of my favorite things to do. And I think for a lot of us, we can trace stuff back when we go back to childhood or another time of our lives, where you might be able to connect to a time of your life where you felt really happy, or you felt really free, or you were doing something different that felt fun and alive and joyful and like freedom for you. Then what's one little thing that you were doing there? And maybe that can also be a little avenue for finding more information about what you really want and seeing it kind of like a breadcrumb trail that you're following, and that it doesn't have to be something really serious of like, oh, I don't know what I want. More so of like, this is an exploration. How can I kind of sniff it out and have fun with this and maybe turn in a direction that doesn't feel all that great, an exploration for a direction that might turn out to be surprisingly amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And one way that I started doing that was, trying different things. So I'm not a painter. I don't draw, but I took a watercolor class and I painted something.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to be the next great watercolor painter, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And then I took a cooking class, and I took a spin class, and I took a belly dancing class. And I'm not going to necessarily become an expert at any of those things, but it's getting out and trying things and seeing what you like or what it is you like about that thing. And, the more the merrier, I think,
and
that you try.
While you're saying that, I forgot how many other things I tried, because once I did like the life drawing class where I did not feel like I was very good at it, and there were a lot of really, really talented artists in there, but I kind of got beyond that. It's like, okay, whatever. I'm at where I'm at, and the instructor was great with that too. Then it was like, okay, maybe I try a painting class, then ceramics. Then I'm trying Zumba at the gym, which I had never tried before. And it's like, okay, we're trying new things. And it's like building this momentum for, hey, I have a menu of options of experiences to try in life to see what would be really fun. And maybe trying a cooking class would be fun, or maybe trying something completely out there, like a hip hop dance class could be fun. I know of a woman funny story. I think that she's in her mid 40s and she decided that she was going to sign up for a hip hop dance class. And then when she signed up, they were like, so is this for your kid? And she's like, no, it's for me. I'm like, I love that. Because it's just like, yeah, there's no rules. I can go try a hip hop dance class whenever I please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's another part of, kind of figuring out what you want is giving yourself permission to try anything.
Yeah.
Just go do it.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, that just goes back to the whole, like, why not? There doesn't come a time in our lives where it's like, oh, you're a certain age, so you can't ... No, you can try any of those things. And then you never know where it could even go. Not to say that then you would become a famous chef or something like that, but it could open a door. Although, didn't Julia Child actually start cooking in her 50s?
I think so, yeah.
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 And even, like, I just found out last week, I don't know how I didn't know this, but Louise Hay, who has Hay House Publishing, and now they like publish all like those big people like Wayne Dyer and everyone. She didn't even start that company until she was 60.
Wow.
And I'm like, all right, awesome.
Yeah, and now it's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's trying new things, wherever you are at in life, that there's no set rules there. I think that's one of the best ways to start to just get on that breadcrumb trail, as I said, of finding what you really do want. And then I think that there's also, so our, like part 2 of our subject is declare what you want. There's also nothing wrong with declaring what you want while you're on that trail. And then being like, okay, I declared it, and now I've changed my mind. I'm going to declare something new. But it's kind of having ownership of it at every time that you feel like, I love this, I'm giving it a whirl, it's connecting with me, and this is what I really want. And it could be this is what I really want right now, and this is what I really want to build in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I am such a huge fan of not doing something just because you started it.
Yeah.
Like, if you get in and you don't like it, leave, cave, quit. There is nothing wrong with that. It's just information.
Yeah.
You start something, you don't like it, perfect. Now you know what you did not know beforehand.
Yeah. Like, I actually really did tell people that I wanted to be an artist, and I had ideas of what I was going to do, from everything from being a custom tile maker was one where I was like, I think I'm going to be a custom tile maker. My friends were thrilled. They couldn't wait for me to redo their kitchen. And then I was like, no, I've changed my mind, everybody. I am going to do something else. But then all along the way, when I kind of said that I am an artist, that just spoke to me. And even though not to repeat myself, but it's kind of like, even though I'm not a professional artist, I still consider myself to be an artist. Like, I see coaching as part of my art form. So even though I can declare something of, this is what I want, this really connects with me, and I'm just going to own it. But that doesn't mean that I'm putting myself in a box, or that I'm really narrowing my vision, but more so that I can own this and declare what I want with broad vision of what that could be, of how would I be defining artist. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm selling paintings, even though maybe I will someday. But that for me, it was really having a craft and a feeling attached to being an artist, which I feel like I do in my coaching.
Yes. And it's funny because I said so many times that I'm not a creative person because I don't do art, I don't draw, I don't play music, I don't do any of these kind of artsy things. And another coach friend of ours is like, you are so silly. She's like, you are absolutely creative in your coaching.
Yeah.
She's like, you come at things with a different point of view. You ask things in a different way. And just because you're not putting paintings out or creating a CD or whatever doesn't mean you're not creative. And so I think this kind of idea of what something is, so whether it's creative or how it's supposed to look, is something that can hold people back a lot.
Yeah.
So like you said, sort of expanding that view and not thinking it has to look like, somebody else or even a certain way.
Right. Yeah.
It's whatever feels good to you is what's meant for you. And that could be different from everyone else, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm getting to the point where I see Lisa in my corner here, and I'm dying to hear from her because Lisa has even been, she didn't even know it, I don't think, until today, that she was like part of the spark of inspiration for some of this too, because I met Lisa in January, so 4 months-ish ago. And that's when I learned that she traveled around the world with her 2 kids. And at the time, I think that they were 9 and 11. Is that right, Lisa?
That is right.
Yeah. And I was so inspired, and I came back. And then, of course, I got on Skype with Tasha and was like, I could travel around the world with 2 kids. And she's like, yeah, of course you could. And I'm like, no, there's proof. There's proof. I met somebody who did. And I just thought it was so amazing. It was like, yeah, think about how many people who don't do wild ideas that they have in their head because of all of these reasons why they can't. And I would say that would be one of those things where it would be, I don't even know if I would even allow my mind to go there, because it would feel so big of like, who does that? Who travels around the world with their 2 kids? But then when that kind of exploded, and I was like, somebody did that, and it was amazing. And things turned out, I thought about their schooling, and I'll let you tell some of this. But basically, I just wanted to say that I'd love to bring you more into the conversation, because you have been really inspirational for me and what is possible, and blowing away the ideas of things that we can't do. So Lisa, can you just say a little bit more about your story and how it came to be that you even got to the point of traveling around the world with your 2 kids?
Yes, and Sarah, first let me say I'm so touched. I'm like sitting here tearing up because I'm like, really?
Yes.
It's so amazing, because I think to myself, wow, how do you start a group where you're talking about these big issues and have it ongoing and welcome all these people in? So to me, that is a barrier. I'm like, you did something that affects people on a week-to-week basis that is also huge. So it's just these, I guess we all have that.
Yeah.
So the way, just really the short answer to how you pick a dream and you go after it is you decide. Mm-hmm. And it is that complicated, and it is that simple. And we talked and talked and talked about doing this. And our story started, my husband and I had lived in Rome. And then we had 2 very young children, and we decided we were going to move back to Rome so they would be bilingual. And that was when they were 4 and 6. And we thought, this is a great idea. We're going to go do this. And we actually went to Rome to find an apartment and to find schooling for the kids. and I completely freaked out. I realized that my Italian was so bad. There was no way, if my kids were in an Italian-only speaking school, that I'd be able to communicate with the teachers in a really meaningful way, and really just freaked out and decided this dream that we had had for a really long time, my husband and I together, that I couldn't do. And part of it was the age of my children. Part of it was my own fear, my own willingness to open up to what was possible. Mm-hmm. For some reason, it never occurred to me that my Italian would get better.
That's so funny.
You know,
what the mind will do.
Yeah, our minds are amazing, crazy places. And I really freaked out. And so on the flight back home, I had to tell my husband, I just didn't think, we had had this dream for 12 years. I was like, I don't think I can do it. And when I said that to him, lucky me, he said back, okay, this has been a big dream. If this isn't the dream anymore, what is? What's the next dream? And we decided it was traveling around the world with our kids when they were old enough to appreciate it and carry their own luggage. And, but before they were too old to not want to leave their friends. Mm. And so we put some parameters around it. And we didn't really know when that would happen, but we decided we were going to do it. And we had decided about Rome too, and which gets back to your point, Sarah, when you said just because you declare something doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yeah.
We had declared Rome and living in Rome as this was the thing. And then it wasn't right. And so we had to go back to that trail. Okay, that wasn't the right path at the right time. What is? And we declared this next thing, and we started saving for it, and we started just looking, like, where would we go? How would we do it? How do you travel with one? We got rid of everything we owned and so each of us had everything we owned on our backs for an entire year. How do you get rid of everything? How do you do that with two young kids who in our world have so much stuff? And we declared that we wouldn't travel with devices, that the kids wouldn't be able to dive into playing on their devices instead of being with the family. Mm-hmm. So we carried a computer to blog with, but that was it. And nobody had games, and at the time there weren't even, iPhones were just coming out. So there were all these things that we just decided and started working towards. And I'm afraid I'm rambling here, but we ended up deciding the time to go was when they were 9 and 11. And we rented out all the barriers that people come up with. Once you decide, they're no longer barriers. They're just obstacles that you can go around, over, under, and you can figure them out.
Yeah.
So the only barriers when in your mind, and if you decide you're doing it no matter what, it's no longer a barrier.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I met you, I asked about, so were you guys working? There were two main things I was curious about. One was, were you working, and what happened with jobs? Because I think your husband is an attorney, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, so what happened there? And then my other question was your kids and the education. And I'd love for you to, because I said, so did they just miss a year of school? Did they come back? Were they a year behind? And then I loved your answers to both of those, because that was the other thing that kind of was like, I'm putting up these barriers, imagining it for myself of like, okay, how would we do this? And then it was like they just went away. So can you share those details too?
Sure. And the other big one that I'll add on right up front is your house and your stuff.
Oh, yeah. That too. Yeah.
Right. So we got rid of our cars. We rented out our house. And we got rid of most of our stuff, and the stuff that we didn't want to get rid of, the people who were renting the house, we asked them if we could store it in a small room in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept a very limited number of things and just stored them. But in our house, so we weren't paying to have things stored. We rented the house. Our jobs, my husband's an attorney and he has his own practice. And for anybody who has their own, is an entrepreneur, and you just can't walk away from clients. And that was a huge thing. And it wasn't a barrier, it was just an obstacle. And so he figured out, he went and he talked to other small law offices, and he moved in with one of them for the last year we were in town. And he slowly just made sure all of his clients had somebody else to take care of them for that year.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just, okay, I'm a solopreneur. That's what he does. And so for this year, I'm going to join in with this group. And the thought behind it was that if he had started a law practice before and been successful, you could do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Those clients weren't going to be sitting here waiting for him. The business was not going to be sitting here waiting for him, but we'd done it before. So you do it again.
Yeah.
It's a barrier. You're just creating barriers.
Yeah.
And I had a fundraising business that I ran, and I just closed that down. And again, people always need fundraising. If it was here when I got back, great. And if it wasn't, then I'd go out and find new clients. And on the trip, I determined there was no way I was coming back to doing what I had done before. And the very last part of the trip, I declared, I was like, there's no way. I can't go back and do fundraising anymore. I can't be a fundraising consultant. My husband said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but something's going to come out of it. And literally we had been home a week, and a neighbor knocked on the door and said, I've got the perfect job for you. Will you come interview for it? And that's what I did for the next 3 years. I was the service learning consultant at a school.
Wow.
And so literally when I let it go, a job, I didn't even go look for it. It knocked on my door. And it was the perfect
I love
job.
that.
Yeah, and I think that's also when, I really love how you're describing it as there's not barriers, it's just obstacles. So there might be a challenge, there might be something to climb over, or something to go around, or another way to think about something that might feel a little bit more challenging. But I think that when you're in that space of like, it's not going to stop me, it may just end up being a little bit of a different path than I had expected. I truly believe that then that energy makes it easier for whatever you're wanting to come to you. That it's like you're not putting up those walls, and then it just kind of flows your way or knocks on your door.
I truly believe, I now truly believe it.
Yeah.
The other piece, there are a couple other pieces. One is funding a trip like this.
Yeah.
Neither of us worked over the course of the year. We truly took the year off. And again, it's just what you're talking about. So that's why I want to say something about it, is the energy of it is we always knew we could figure it out. We had saved for this for about 5 years. We knew we were getting rid of all of our stuff, so we stopped buying anything. Mm-hmm. Why would you buy things if you don't need it? The only things we really bought were clothes for our kids, because they kept growing out of theirs.
Yeah.
But even my husband and I quit buying clothes.
Yeah.
We just quit buying stuff because stuff was not as important as this trip. But when we got to that point, we had saved up enough money for a couple of months. Mm-hmm. And we were still going to go. And we were still planning for a year. We had no idea how we were going to pay for it. And the energy was, this is going to work. We will figure it out. Our parents were freaking out. I mean, you can imagine, our friends were freaking out. And 4 days before the trip, my husband's a lawyer, and he had worked on a case in California 10 years earlier for 5 years, and nothing happened with it. And 4 days before we left, we got a check in the mail settling that case for the exact amount of money we needed for a year of travel and 6 months of resettlement when we got back into Denver.
Wow.
4 days.
That is incredible.
We had no idea how we were going to pay for it before. We are not trust fund babies. We work. That's how we make a living. That's how we support ourselves. And we figured if we had to, we'd work along the way. We didn't know how it was going to, we didn't know how it was all going to turn out.
Yeah.
We just knew it would.
This reminds me of what we talked about a lot in the first call, where we were, having the desire, right? So you guys had this desire to go, you decided, you committed, you didn't necessarily know how it was all going to pan out, but you let go of the how and when, trusting that the universe was going to take care of you, and it did.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's one of the most important things people can do when they're declaring what they want is drop that attachment to how it's going to turn out, when it's going to turn out. And like Sarah had said in our last call, what exactly it is, because often it can be bigger and it can be more and it can be better than what our minds are able to think that it could potentially even be. So I'm curious how in your life this experience has been now coming back. So everything that you guys went through with the travel and, letting go of your possessions, and how has it affected how you live now?
It's affected all of us differently, but it has definitely affected all of us. As far as our family, we're very, very close. And one of the reasons I think that has happened is, I always say it's truth and trust. We were in places and it was not all perfect. My daughter at one point was diagnosed with typhoid, my son diagnosed with malaria. We, one time almost had to spend the night in a brothel. It was not, there was a time when a rat ran across my foot at the place we were staying. I mean, it's not all perfect. And so, you have to our kids were young. They were 9 and 11. But we all had to be truthful all the time with each other. I don't know how this is going to work out, but it is.
Yeah.
I know this is scary. I'm scared too, but we're together and it's going to be okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
And we had to tell them the truth about the world. They saw parts of the world. We were in third world countries where they saw some very, very difficult things. And you just tell the truth about it. And you don't sugarcoat things. And that's something that's carried through in our lives. And then the other piece is trust. And my son, who was 9 at the time, who is now 14, just last week, he is getting his driver's license. And so we were out driving, and he was driving, and we were also having a conversation. That night he was going to an ultimate Frisbee party where it was going to be a sleepover and with freshmen to seniors. And I knew there would be things happening that he maybe has not been involved with yet, mainly alcohol, drugs, and sex, because he's in high school now and that's very different. And I said to him, we need to have this conversation about what you're going to see and what's going to be there, about decisions you're going to make based on that. And sorry, my phone's ringing in the background. But you need to know I trust you. And that's the bottom line. And I want you to make those decisions from that place of knowing you're trusted. And he said to me, oh, I know you trust me. And I know I've earned that trust, and I know I will always honor that trust. He's a 14-year-old boy. And I said to him, how can that, why? And he said, it's because when I was 9 years old, you trusted me enough to put a backpack on my back and take me around the world and show me things that most kids will never see and experience things. So truth and trust are two things we've brought back into our lives. We're all risk takers. We're all willing to take some risks and try new things. And we're not afraid to fail, because we failed so many times on the trip. And it always worked out. It was okay. We learned something and we moved on.
Wow. That is so cool.
So those are the couple that stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then, so my other question was on their education. I said, how did the kids leave for a year? Did they just skip a year of school, or how did that happen?
So what we did is we called it homeschooling, which you can do at any time, anywhere. That was the number one question we got asked as we traveled. People were like, how do you take kids out of school for a year? And the answer is, you take them out of school for the year.
Yeah.
And
that was the greatest answer. It's like, yeah, why can't we just take them out of school?
Right. And we took a math curriculum with us. There were a couple pieces we didn't want them to fall behind on, and one was math. So we took a math curriculum with us. We ended up, both my kids came back 3 years ahead of their peers in math. Because when you teach math one-on-one, you move at whatever rate you want. Versus a class of 25, 30 kids. So my kids went through 3 years of math in 1 year, both of them. My husband speaks a lot of many different languages and chose to teach them Latin as we traveled.
Wow.
So they did Latin lessons. And then the rest of it was, as you can imagine, architecture and art and history and geography and world issues. And they researched every place we were, they researched what we were going to see and what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And that was their education. And some really fun, like an example of that is we were in Egypt, and the first day we went and saw 3 different pyramids and the hieroglyphics, and we came back, and my son, who was 9, was kind of frustrated because he couldn't read the hieroglyphics. So that night, he spent the night on the computer at the hostel we were staying at, and he taught himself the hieroglyphic alphabet. Tore out a piece of notebook paper, he wrote it all down, and he spent hours learning the hieroglyphic alphabet. The next day, he could tell you everything, who was buried, time of year, like the year, their name, who was buried with them. Unbelievable. So that's when kids direct their own education. We didn't say you have to learn the hieroglyphic alphabet. It was all self-directed. What do you want to know while we're here? Yeah. They learned about the Vietnam War from the vantage point of the Vietnamese, not the Americans. Totally different history, completely different history.
Yeah. So. You know, it's funny because when you just said, what do you want to know when you're here, just really caught me. Because I thought, that's kind of the ultimate question. And really, you can take it so much bigger of like, what do you really want to know in your life? Or what do you really want to do in your life? But even just starting with like, what do you really want to know? There's something about that question that just really spoke to me, because I think in many ways, if you were to parallel it with traditional education versus what you guys did, and the way that we oftentimes live our lives versus what we could do, that we don't have to do everything by this rule book of, because you have this job or something that you need to stay at it for a while, or you go from this step to this step to this step in life, and that's just what you do. I've heard that a lot of, that's just what you do. But it takes away from kind of the question that you asked your son, in a way of like, well, what is it that you really want to know? And it's kind of like, okay, so if we were to step ourselves away from this rule book of that's just the way that things go in life, and then instead say, what if I could metaphorically leave school, or leave the traditional route, or reconsider that it doesn't have to be done that way? What is it that I would really want to know? Or what is it that I would really want to do? Or how is it that I would really want to explore? And your kids just kind of like went with it, that I want to know what the hieroglyphics say, and I want to be able to read what it says at the pyramids. That I think that it's the same essence that so many of us are hungry for, is that same kind of like aliveness that your kids had.
Yeah, and I mean, how empowering is that for him?
Yeah.
To know that he can say, I want to know what this says, and then to go learn it on his own. So that now he's learning that at 9, so that when he's 20 or 25 and going out into the world, if he goes to university or whatever he does, something comes up and he thinks, I want to do that. He's not going to have all that brain chatter that's telling him he can't, because he's got history that proves he can do it. He just has to go do it. He has to decide, like you said at the very beginning of the whole story. He just has to decide that's what he wants to do, and then do it.
The amazing part about that, Tasha, is a lot of what we get caught up in is other people's rules.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And so those are barriers. We create, like, oh, well, you're supposed to at 25 get married, or at 35 buy a house and have 2.0 kids. And whose rules are they anyway? Mm-hmm. And where you can't just decide, like there are rules that we do have to follow. We have to be kind, we have to be compassionate, but a lot of them we don't, we just think we do.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of times when we do stretch out and do something really different, but sometimes we're afraid of people's reactions, because their reactions aren't always really positive. Sometimes people will talk about their own fears of you doing that, or going on a different route. I know that some people thought it was great when I just up and quit my job, but some other people kind of thought, well, why didn't you just wait it out until you either knew what you wanted or had another job or something else? But that's their own fears. That's their own stuff. And that if we are afraid of other people's fears, then we're all just in this cyclical, nobody's really living their life, because we're all afraid of failing or having it not work out or whatever it is.
Absolutely. And, those fears are real, and some of them happen. We came back, and long story short, my best friend really has never talked to me since. She said that by going to do this, I abandoned her.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's a huge thing to lose.
Wow.
Yet, that's her stuff It's not mine.
Yeah.
And that we have to realize that there are consequences. There are real things that happen when we do these big things.
Yeah.
But there, again, you can live in fear of them or you can face them.
And we have zero control over them. Like I know so many people who have been afraid of losing weight because of what people might think of them. I have a really good friend, in fact, who's said, and she's been wanting to lose weight, but is afraid that if she does, her other friend will abandon her because then they won't have that in common. So we have zero control over what people think of what we do. So it's really not ours to have that be any part of our decision because we have no control over it, and it's their own fear being a projection onto us. Yeah, nothing we can do about it.
Nor should we try.
Yeah. Yeah, but I love your story so much, and I just think that it's perfect that you joined us today.
Well, thank you for doing this, and thank you for asking, because I love talking about it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing it. It was, of course, I hadn't heard it before, and I also had a friend who years ago had traveled around the world with her kids. So when Sarah said that, I was like, yes, people do this. It's so amazing. But I love hearing, people getting outside of the box of the way that we're supposed to do things, or, the way that we think we have to do things when we don't have to,
Why not me?
Yeah.
That's right.
Really, why not?
Why not?
Any of us? Why can't we think of anything that we want and then make it happen? And then I think that what's just really sticking with me today is how it seemed like on your journey, Lisa, that there would be things that would maybe be a challenge, but then when you really just let go and didn't have it become a barrier to you doing it, then many of those things turned out better than you could have imagined. That's one of those pieces that I love, and I'll be reminding myself of, because once we let go of it, so many amazing things can come.
Yeah, and I think when you really decide that you want something, you're going to find the way to do it and not an excuse for why you can't do it.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah, you'll find a way. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So do you have anything now, Lisa, that you're looking to declare to do next?
Well, we do yes and no. So yes, there's some big travel goals still out there. Right now, my current next thing is taking my coaching business to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So,
awesome. So what is it you do as a coach? Just for people who don't know.
I coach around appreciation and gratitude, primarily, how that is something people are lacking in their lives and really craving. Mm-hmm. And I also coach on making big dreams come true.
Can you also mention your book?
Yes. So I wrote a book that came out last September. It's called Discover the New G-Spot, or How to Unfriend Your Guilt. And it's an ebook about guilt and gratitude.
And for those who are curious, where could they find that book?
So thank you, Sarah. That book is on Amazon.com. It's an ebook, and it's really fun. It has a lot of our travel stories in it, because that was the place that I really learned how to give up guilt and replace it with gratitude.
That's so good.
Yeah, so good. And I think that is very important when you're declaring what you want.
Yeah.
Because you can get so caught up in feeling guilty about getting the things that you want. It's almost like we don't believe that we deserve it. We're not worthy to have it. And so when all these good things start happening, it's like we almost feel like we shouldn't be allowed to have it. But if we can move to that place of gratitude instead of guilt, I think, that is something that everyone could benefit.
It does. It just changes
make that a practice.
Right. It changes the energy.
Absolutely.
It just changes the energy. And there are times you will feel guilty in this world. So use it to your advantage, figure out what it's trying to teach you, and move to the gratitude. And you will find that too.
That's so good, because I think that so many of us have, that guilt has been a way of trying. So I'm picturing like the parent trying to make their child feel guilty in order to motivate a certain behavior that they want. And then we kind of absorb that, and then we make ourselves feel guilty for having things that maybe somebody else would not want us to have, or looking a certain way or whatever. And then to really think, okay, so guilt's going to arise in me. That might just happen, but then to turn it around and be like, okay, so what is it trying to teach me, rather than even saying, I'm never going to feel guilty again.
Right. Or trying to run from it or hide it, so it's literally, I always say it's just, it's welcoming it into your life. It's like, hey, thank you. You're trying to tell me something.
Yeah. That's so good.
Hey, they're good looking. What you trying to tell me?
I think we might have to have another, one of these chats just about guilt. Another big area where it's like, why not me? Because I'd feel guilty if I had these things because other people don't, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Or mom guilt is huge.
Big time. Yeah, I recognize that. I have felt that. Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be great. So if you're interested, Lisa, we'll do this formally next time. Yeah, that was fantastic. So Tasha, is there something that you would want to declare that you really want right now?
Yes. And this kind of came to me yesterday, and I was thinking I might even write a blog post on it, because I was driving in my car, and of course, Sarah, that I always get inspired by music. And this song came on the radio, and I was like sort of driving and not really paying attention. But then I heard these words, and it was just like the universe was speaking directly to me in these lyrics of, what are you waiting for? That was the name of the song, and that was the lyric they were singing. And I was like, so I came home and I wrote down this list of all these things I've been waiting for. And some of them, I don't have to wait for them. Or it just got me thinking about, why was I waiting for it? And what would it mean if I had it? So it just really got me into this really bigger process of, coming to what I want and what I don't want, and what am I not willing to wait for, and all of this. So I'm going to stop waiting on things that I could be doing now. So essentially stop making excuses. That's what I'm declaring.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting.
Yeah. That's so good. Resonates with me. Yeah. There's been many things.
Tasha, what's an example?
Well, a little example, okay, could be I'm always wanting to go hiking. And lots of times I want someone to go hiking with. And perhaps on the day that I can go or that the weather's good, you know, like I don't want to go hiking in the rain. I could, but I'd rather go when it's sunny out. Maybe everyone else is working. And I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm going to just go. So that's one small thing. And I mean, I have done that before. I've gone hiking by myself lots. But that's one example for this summer, you know, or it could be driving around the Cabot Trail, which I also want to do this summer. So if nobody wants to go when I'm going to go, then I'm still going to go and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, what you were saying kind of reminded me of something, because I'll be the one who, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, what I want seems a little frivolous, well, that'll be mine, because I saw some shoes that I wanted recently and was like, those are amazing and really expensive, but I want them, and why couldn't I have them? But I waited and just kind of, I think on it. Then I ended up getting this refund in the mail for something that was almost the same amount as that. And I was like, those are mine. I'm going to have them. And I just, was like, why not? Not only why not me, but why not now? And why not spend more on these than I would have thought that I would spend on shoes? Who cares? Why not? And they make me happy and I love them. So that's mine.
Did you go get them?
What's that?
Did you go get them?
Oh, I have them. Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
And I love them.
I kind of want you to send me a picture of them because I'm so excited about them.
Post it in the group.
Okay. You will see my fabulous shoes. Yes, I will take a picture and post them.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well,
Sarah, I just have to say something though. Now that I've started talking.
Yeah.
It's not frivolous.
No, it's not.
That's what you build on. There's nothing frivolous about it.
Well, that's my talk. It's catching the things that we say of like, I don't really need those. That's been my talk for so long, but it's kind of been like, yeah, but how do they make me feel when I wear them? And it's like, I feel beautiful. I feel confident. I feel like I have the essence of, why not me? Why can't I have these awesome metallic heeled shoes? I love them. They're mine. I live once. And yeah, and you're completely right that that's not frivolous in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if it gives you all those things,
yeah,
then you do need them.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the exact radical opposite. It's not that you don't need them. You absolutely do freaking need them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because usually my old talk has been like, are they practical? That kind of thing. And now it's like, they are practical. Yes. For all of those reasons. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys for pointing that out. So.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. I love these conversations. So we will be meeting again, talking more about Why Not Me in a month. So it's the second Friday of every month. I don't know the exact date that we'll be meeting again next month, but we'll be sending out an email, or we'll also post it on the Facebook group. So if you're not on the Facebook group, be sure to go get on there so that you can communicate with us and see some of our posts and ask any questions. So any final words before we sign off?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, it was just amazing to have you with us today. It was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, it was incredible. I am super inspired, and I just want to say I hope you guys both have a great weekend, and everyone else who's listening to this after when we send out the recording.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you soon. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.